character is also hurt and not happy.
Yeah.
And sort of the upper class woman makes him feel like a shit.
I think it's partly like that, but I think it's that as an ex-pilot in this broken society coming out of the Second World War, he has seen so much death, and all of his vitality really comes from as a response to the death that he's seen. To have all his friends shot out of the sky, and then to come back and still be alive. You're determined to live, to drink, to sing, to play golf, and make love, I think, and then to read a suicide note. He simply doesn't have the emotional self-possession or maturity at that point to be able to hold her suicide on his conscience. He can't take it, I think, and that's really a straw that breaks the camel's back. So I kind of, what's interesting is I see Freddie as really, really fragile, and his cruelty comes from that fragility. But of course, the film is played from Hester's perspective, so he just seems really cruel.
I think you bring that across, actually. I think you feel a great deal of sympathy for him.
Thank you very much.
I think she's trapped in a way that I find fascinating.
Yeah.
Because suicide has to be the only exit possible.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I don't know much about suicide. And I've never been able... I'm such an optimist, strangely, in my life.
I wonder why they cast you as Freddie.
But I see... I'm generally a very happy person, and it's hard to think into a place where you would want to not be alive, I guess.
I got it. Give me a little compare and contrast between working with Branagh and working with Davies in terms of
Well, Ken Branagh is like he's like a kind of he's like a general, you know. He's the most inspiring leader, and everyone on the cast and crew feels like they're kind of united with this extraordinary mission, you know, riding off triumphantly into battle. Especially on a film like Thor. I mean, he's so inspiring and so passionate, and that passion kind of distills itself into the entire unit. Everybody feels like they're pulling together, and I love his courage. For actors, he's very, very brave in terms of every time you think you've done something. I mean, you go for the obvious choice, possibly. Your instinct takes you down the obvious route, and then he says, "Okay, we've got that. I might use that. But now that we've got that, let's try something else. Let's turn it on its head. Let's if it's a sad scene, let's try and play it for laughs. If it's a funny scene, you know, he just has a very unique and very courageous way of coaxing variety out of his performances, in a way that challenges you but thrills you at the same time.
It makes you still feel safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you could ask Chris Hemsworth, Tony Hopkins, Natalie Portman, Rene Russo, we'd all say the same thing. Terence Davis is able, between take one and take two, to quote a stanza of T.S. Eliot, and somehow it's the right thing that you need to hear. It somehow makes the scene better. It's really remarkable. He's a poet and a painter. And different, of course, because, you know, Ken's an actor, and so he knows what it's like to be occupying that space in front of the camera, and, you know, maybe you've got 20 minutes to shoot your side of a scene, and he's very, very sensitive and economical. And Terence also is just has a very sensitive soul, and you know, between takes he might quote you a sonnet or something.
Now, working with Rachel, were you two speaking the same language of cinema? Was that something you had to work hard to get to the same place?
Actually, no, not at all. It was the first time I met Rachel. We were holding hands from day one. So I mean, I think she's a fantastically brave actress, and direct, and she's fearless. She's unafraid of reaching to the extreme of her emotional range in a scene, and herself, revealing, you know, things that don't belong to her at all. And I loved working with her. I really did. I thought she was wonderful.
And what else is coming out of all of this fruition? I mean, your Hollywood is all over you now. What's going on with that?
I don't know. I just take every day as it comes.
How are you going to make the choices that you have to make? What kind of rules are you going to follow?
Instinct.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Actually.
Always. It's very easy, actually, if you listen to your instinct. You read something, and how do you instinctively respond? I think strategy is the enemy. No, don't try to be strategic.
And says your agent.
Hello. I love surprising myself and chasing challenges. You know, I'd love to keep stretching what I think I'm capable of. I mean, this last year I didn't. If you'd gone back in time, if we both went back in time and introduced ourselves to Tom Hiddleston 5 years ago and said this is what 2011 is going to look like, he wouldn't believe either you or me. So already I'm sitting here rather surprised by the whole thing.
What was the engine of it? Was Thor the engine of the shift?
Actually, the shift sort of happened in me before Thor in a funny way. I know that sounds odd, but I started to conceive. I suddenly realized that I'd placed a glass ceiling on my expectations, imposed only by me. It wasn't as if anyone else said, Tom, you're not going to be able to do these things, by the way. It's as if I'd said to myself, by the way, you'll never do those things. I was shooting the first season of Wallander in Sweden, and on a day off, I got the train into the nearest town called Malmo to watch Iron Man, starring Robert Downey Jr. and directed by Jon Favreau, and I saw it and watched it and completely loved it. And at the
end, a great movie.
It's a great movie. And I said to myself, it's such a good movie. I'll probably never make a film like that. And then cut to 3 years later and I'm in a scene with Iron Man in the Avengers. So I think there was a shift where I just started to believe that everything was possible.